finally, the day that you've been waiting for, the day that you get to go home. Now, this video is going to be basically focused on what to expect after that. I remember in our journey on the way home, it was 85 days. I remember those things of every day you check in and check out, have the name tag on, have to take the name tag off, all that stuff, and you're scrubbing in and scrubbing out. And now we get a chance to take our baby home. Now, every situation is different. Some people are going to come home and like our situation where there's a heart monitor and we're taking an oxygen take home, and you may have one or both of those, or maybe some other challenges as well. Or you may come home with nothing attached, and that is great. And every situation is different. But this is a totally new life experience. You know, we mentioned earlier, not bringing home a quote unquote normal baby, and things are going to look a little bit different.
So, again, the mixed emotions. You're obviously excited to be bringing your baby home, but you may also be feeling scared and anxious. And, when your baby's in the NICU, it's like if something happens, everybody's right there, or, there's cords attached, things they're telling you, the monitors are going off. But what happens when you bring your baby home and maybe you don't have, if you're fortunate enough to not be bringing any equipment home, how are you going to know if something's going on? I remember those first few nights where you're literally just, watching your baby sleep. And ours did have, our little boy did have a heart monitor and oxygen. So he was still kind of attached to things. And his heart monitor actually went off in the middle of the night on the very first night. And it was like this screeching, loud beeping that just, shocked us out of our sleep. And he was fine. I don't know. I think one of the cords came loose or something. But it is that time where you're maybe going to doubt, especially if it's your first child. That for us, it was our third child. So we had brought a baby home before. And so that part wasn't new. But obviously, it did feel like our first time because it was a totally different experience. And so, just trying to again, lean into God, trust, pray, and just try to, not be so hyper vigilant, but obviously be paying attention to your child and making sure, you're watching for any warning signs, and you know what to do if that happens. You have all the contact information that you need. If something does happen, you're, familiar with how to use the equipment, if there is equipment that you're bringing home. And just try to trust that, again, you're the parent and you're going to do a great job taking care of your baby.
Yep. And then when you come home, you find out within a day or two, there's multiple appointments that you now have. You have an occupational therapy appointment, you have physical therapy. Sometimes you have speech as far as maybe learning how to eat and things like that. There's so many different appointments. We thought we'd come home and then 2 days later is an appointment. Then 4 days later is another appointment. Then 6 days later is another appointment. There's so many more appointments than you were used to. If this was, not your first one, there's a lot of different appointments, but it's what's in the best interest of your child to make sure they're progressing when they're not in the full 24-hour care of a hospital.
One of the biggest surprises to me was the fact that we weren't bringing home a typical baby. I guess going into the NICU, I was prepared for the NICU stay, not prepared, but, as much as I could be. And then I thought okay, at the end of the journey, we'll take our baby home and life will go on. And as I got closer to the discharge and talking with the doctors and the nurses, I realized that we actually will not have a typical normal situation when we bring our baby home. Again, this may be dependent upon, how premature your baby was or complications. So it may be different for you, but in our case, he was supposed to essentially be in isolation for his first year, meaning they recommended he doesn't go in any group settings, like a church daycare or a regular daycare, or be in group settings, really be around other kids, because for him specifically, and when a baby is born, significantly premature, a normal cold to them could put them back in the hospital. And so that can be a punch in the gut a little bit, because you're like, I'm finally going to bring my baby home. All my friends and family finally get to meet my baby. And then you realize, no, that's actually not the case. And having to even just prepare friends and family for that was hard too. They obviously want to meet your baby and want to come and ooh and ah over your baby. And, we had to kind of set some boundaries in place. We had to prepare people because just like we didn't necessarily know that was going to be the situation, they didn't know either. And so for us personally, we decided to do a social media post and tried to write it in a lighthearted way, but letting them know that if we were going to be having very, very limited visitors around him, and also if somebody, does have a cold or any sort of a sickness, symptoms, anything like that, that they're not welcome in our home, unfortunately. And that's hard. It's hard because if you're bringing your baby home in like maybe cold and flu season, where everyone has the sniffles or whatever, that can be really hard. But that is important because typically premature babies, they are more susceptible. We had our little boy pretty shielded in that first year, but still he has siblings, and his older siblings would catch stuff, and he would get respiratory things, and we did find ourselves in the emergency room in urgent care pretty frequently. They kind of knew us by name in the emergency room in that first year, and that was hard and that was frustrating. But it was part of the process. And his lungs. He was born at 28 weeks, so his lungs were kind of his main issue. So if he got any sort of a respiratory and virus or infection, he was really sick and wheezy and having a hard time breathing and things like that. And so just being able to prepare your friends and family and doing it in the most loving way possible, but also being firm, because there may be people who push back, like, oh, come on, I want to come snuggle this baby, and it is hard to set those boundaries. And so just knowing what is going to be best for you and your family, and obviously having a conversation with your doctor, and knowing the level of severity specifically for your child is important. But that is a time where you will have to set some boundaries.
Now that you're home, you maybe are in a little bit of a groove now. Just make sure you focus on your mental health and your emotional health. And yes, I am talking to the dads here too. Sometimes we try to be so strong and so tough that we hold it all in. We want to be the backbone for the family. But at the same time, we have to be able to work through things too. It's okay to have the conversation with your spouse, and talk through these things, or even with a really good trusted friend. And, a good friend's gonna understand that you went through a pretty traumatic event in your life. And sometimes you just need to kind of chat about some things, and hopefully have those people in your life. If not, maybe look for a pastor or even get a hold of us, and we'll do what we can to help out. And the biggest thing is you have to be able to work through that stuff, because later on what happens is, as I mentioned in my message to dads, like, it's just going to come out in a different way that you don't want it to come out in, and it's not going to look pretty.
Honestly, for me, after the NICU, it was a difficult time, because I think during the NICU stay, you kind of just push through. You're kind of in survival mode, and you're just pushing through. You're just doing it because you have to. And when you get home and things start to settle in, and sometimes it's like a big punch in the face, like, oh my gosh, what did we just go through? And you maybe start to process through some of those emotions and understand, like Jared said, there's a lot of traumatic situations that can happen in the NICU. It can happen even in, maybe in your birth process. And for me, I think I just barreled through the NICU, and yeah, it was very hard. But that first year, like, I don't know, I really struggled with kind of the emotional health and the mental health of things, because I hadn't really processed through those emotions. I think a lot of times, we tell ourselves, like, well, at least the baby's coming home. At least our baby's survived. And you can try to at least yourself and kind of be so positive that you don't allow yourself to actually say, yes, I am thankful. I am grateful that my baby is healthy. I am thankful that my baby is home. I'm thankful I got to bring my baby home. I'm thankful that my baby survived. But I went through really hard stuff. And I deserve to process that. I deserve to heal through that. I deserve to acknowledge the pain and the trauma, because for me, I mean, I started having issues with anxiety, and I personally hadn't really dealt with that strongly in the past at any point. And I started having some issues with some pretty strong anxiety, and I was trying to figure out why. And as I started to really process through emotions and kind of heal from that, and for me personally, it was just acknowledging it. It was like taking the time to acknowledge how difficult it was and all the things that we had gone through, and we're still going through. That was the hard part, still going through all the emergency room visits, the urgent care visits, the PT, the OT, the speech, all these things. People were like, oh, he's home now and look at him, he's fine. And in my head, I'm screaming, no, he's not fine. He's not fine. He's going through all these things. We're still doing all this stuff. And he actually was hospitalized just after he turned a year old. He got RSV and was hospitalized for 8 days. And that was kind of the breaking point for me, really, where I realized I had to deal with all these emotions because it just brought some of that stuff back up. So I just really encourage you, like Jared said, find someone you can talk to, whether it be a professional, whether it be your pastor, whether it be a friend that you can actually trust who will actually validate your feelings and not just tell you you're just going to have to get over it, or, you need someone who's going to validate what you went through. And again, we are here. Reach out to us, contact us. We'd love to chat with you and help you through that process. But it's okay to seek professional help as well. It's okay to not be okay for a period of time, but then you do need to heal and you do need to move on for yourself, for your children, and for this journey. So we hope that this has prepared you a little bit on what to expect. And again, your situation may be different. Your baby may come home and not have any of that stuff, and praise God for that. But still acknowledge that, you went through a tough journey, even if it was maybe not as long as ours. But process through that, and we hope that this maybe gave you some things to be aware of and to look for, and that helps you in your journey.